they conduct an audit, same procedures with us. They are trained exactly same as us. They pick up exactly the same findings as we are picking up. They report those findings to management, and management doesn't implement their recommendations. So when we come back and conduct our audit, where we start by looking at, did the internal audit look at this area? What is it that they find? It also starting to inform our risk. When you develop a procedure, which is going to be this very same procedure that was performed by the internal audit, you find out what they raised, let's say 6 months, 7 months ago, is still a problem. So I think it's the area that we need to really invest time and interrogate the accounting officers, or for them, they need to demonstrate to this committee, what reports did they get from the audit committee? What recommendations did they receive? Which recommendation? What is the status of implementing those recommendations? Because I believe that if we can drive that one, we'll be able to start to see the improvements in the outcomes. Then last year, when we conducted the audits in 23-24, we met with the leadership of the province, and there were a couple of commitments that were raised. And when we were busy with the audit for 24-25, in those commitments that we made, and I must say that I think most of them, they were implemented, and some they were partially implemented, such that which we partially implemented to resolve. But the one that I think it's worth mentioning is those ones that were not implemented last year. The last time that the Office of the Premier by the municipalities to submit the financial statements as per the legislated timeframe. So I think it was still a problem because there were 2 municipalities that did not, as well as Maluta performed for the municipality as well as the entity, with the result that for those municipalities, we are still busy auditing now. So that discipline is still a challenge in terms of local government. And then for Provincial Treasury, the one that was not yet started, is where Treasury acknowledge the challenge around about the ghost workers. And they made a commitment that they would look into this, they would look at, come up with the initiative to deal with this. I must say, Honorable Chair, it is really concerning, this issue, because you still pick up this risk that there's risk of ghost workers in our institutions. And what is concerning is that even with us, when we engage with the leadership, they're not open about it. And it's something that if we are not acknowledging that it is a problem and we put in the steps in place to address it, is something that is going to continue to haunt us, that we have ghost workers in our system. We always say that even the ghost workers, I know my colleagues even mentioned that, to say the ghost workers that we have these days are so complex, because even when you do the physical verification, they will come and give you your ID, and you think that it is an official, and to find that it is that official is not working. So I think it's a challenge that we need collectively to address it. And then as part of our culture shift journey, we do give you the picture of how are we moving as the province. So this picture, if you recall, the way that we said, because we want to move our auditees away from doing harm to do good, and we give those brackets in between, where we said the worst performing one will be those ones that are sitting in the category of doing harm, but eventually we want to do good. And we set the goal that at least by 2030, we must only have 10% of our auditees that are in the category of doing harm. And those auditees must be the auditees that have at least about 10% of the budget. So it actually means that by 2030, we cannot have health, education, community safety, roads and transport human settlements sitting in that category, because those are the ones that are taking quite a huge chunk of the budget of the province. So if you look in 22-23, when we started with doing this assessment, you can see that 13 of our auditees were sitting in the category of doing harm. And all these auditees that I just mentioned, which are very key in terms of service delivery, they were sitting in that category. 8 was not doing the basics. There was only one, which was Provincial Treasury in 22-23, that was sitting in the category of doing the basics. And very small entities were doing more than the basics, which they contributed very least in terms of the budget. And then we did not have any that is doing good. But through the engagement with the auditees, I'm happy to say we could see some improvement, but the reality is not enough. If you look at what we anticipated for 24-25, which we have now confirmed, this is exactly the picture for 24-25. So you'll see that we still have 11 that are sitting at doing harm. And then we've got 10 not doing the basics. The 2 entities, that is National Museum and the War Museum, they're still maintaining of doing more than the basics. But we are very happy to see that the Provincial Treasury, as well as the Provincial Legislature, which are the very key entities in the province in terms of setting the tone for improving the outcome in the province, that they are sitting in the category of doing good. And I think it's something that is very critical, that we need to make sure that these entities maintain that where they are sitting, so that they are able to encourage and to show the other departments that it is possible to be assessed as doing good. We acknowledge the improvements that we've made. We've seen that Distia has moved out of doing harm category, and they have moved at not doing the basics. And what is the things that need there for them to be able to move out of that category is for them to focus on investigating the UIFW. And then we've got MedPass that moved from doing harm also, and also moved to the category of not doing the basics, and also with them, the attention should be the UIFW. The provincial legislature has moved from doing the basics to doing good. Yeah, the legislature, that assessment, they were doing the basics, and they were able to move to doing good. And what we've seen, there was irregular expenditure, but it was insignificant. And I think it's something that we are encouraging, that we need to continue to make sure that we manage it in that manner. We are very happy with the strides that are made by the Department of Agriculture. Agriculture is doing very well. They also move out of doing harm to not doing the basics. And one of the things that made them to move is because they investigated their UIFW. So there are some good best practices that we see, which we're highlighting so that the other auditees can see that it is possible. The one that worries us, which is COGTA, because COGTA, with these improvements, they moved backwards. So for them, they moved from not doing the basics to doing harm, and it was because they had material non-compliance on non-investigation of the UIFW. And when we're looking at the reason that most of these auditors, if you're looking at that 11 that is doing harm, what is keeping them there mostly is the lack of investigating the UIFW. So I think it's something that we need to push. I know that Treasury was also, I hope they will come through around about that. I know that they were appointing the service provider that would look into the investigating of the UIFW. But the problem is if we are not moving with speed because of the backlog. So we'll find out that there are some investigations that has been done, and unfortunately, when you conduct the investigation, you must start with the old ones. And when we do this assessment is looking at the UIFW that you incurred in the previous financial year. So that means that we need to really move with speed so that we are at the point that we are investigating the recent UIFW that is there. I know that it's something that we also raised when we were looking at this outcome, is the extent of the unauthorized expenditure, which has been declared by the departments, but it is stuck with the legislature. So I think the legislature also need to come and support the department in terms of deciding of how do we deal with this unauthorized expenditure. As you know that for the departments to clear the unauthorized expenditure, it is either it is approved with funds or approved without funding, so that they can see how do they deal with. But at least Treasury is also here. I think they can provide more context of where we are. But if we want to support the departments to move, I think the legislature has to support that cause and make sure that those decisions are made. I know that it's going to have a huge impact in the budget of the province because we are sitting with a huge backlog around about the unauthorized expenditure that still need to be dealt with. And if we're looking at the next slide, because we're spending quite a lot of time looking at what is the role that is played by the coordinating department as well as the legislature. I think we are highlighting there, which I hope that some of these things that we have can be taken care of as part of the resolution so that we are able to move forward, is what we see as critical to be played by these institutions. Like, for example, at the Office of the Premier, which I know they started to do last year, is the extent of them reviewing the annual performance plans. Because we believe that some of the findings that also were picking up on how we're setting up the key performance indicators in the annual performance plans, Office of the Premier should be assisting. I believe that their unit should have the experts that should be able to assist the departments to make sure that we set the indicators properly. They should assist the departments to ensure that the technical indicator descriptions are set up front so that while you are busy setting your indicator, you are already indicating this is how I'm going to collate the information that is going to support how I'm going to report on the achievement. So we're saying that also the Premier must also monitor the performance of the departments. It should not be a surprise come the end of March that the departments report the non-achievement of their indicators. Improvement of intergovernmental coordination and monitoring to address key areas of concern from the prior year. I must say that I think we just need to push them. Last year, they started to work together with TPME, which supported them in looking at this annual performance plan. But we said they need to drive more. Then regarding Provincial Treasury, is them supporting the auditees to improve and sustain clean audit outcomes. So we're saying that Treasury, just make sure that your house is clean for you to sustain your clean audit, and then you move and ensure that you are supporting the other departments. Monitor the audit spending. You'll see the slides that will be speaking about the fiscal pressure. I think as the province, we need to make hard decisions around about the spending. If we are not addressing it, we might find our province in a situation whereby we don't have adequate funds to fulfill our responsibilities. And I think the challenge is even on the now. We know what is happening globally. We know that the things that are happening globally definitely are going to have an impact in the pricing. What are the actions that we are taking now to respond to that? So that is why it become critical for Provincial Treasury to be very close in terms of the monitor the spending and develop the initiatives to reduce the UIFWW that is incurred, let alone the investigating of the past. But how do we ensure that we are close on the current spending now? Then also we said they must ensure that budgets are adequately prepared and monitor actual spending against approved budgets. And then the legislature, where we want you to stay very close, we are concerned about the little progress that is made by the MEC COGTA to table the Sections 47 reports. And therefore we say the legislature must monitor the implementation, therefore. And then we're saying that the quarterly performance report should be terminally tabled and interrogated. I know that the departments table this quarterly performance report, but our concern sometimes when we look at the quarterly performance report, we just focus on whether the department spent 25%. But we're not questioning to say that 25% that was spent, what was it spent for? And are we getting assurance that we get quality of the spending for those? So I think that is what we are challenging the legislature to say, let's try to drive these not just to be at a compliance level, but it should be at an impact level where we see the impact that we're driving. And then the next slide on the audit outcomes. So you'll see that the audit outcomes, so when we look at the outcome for the province, we see a very slow progress in terms of the improvements. So you'll see that the clean audits that we only have 3, which is the legislature, Provincial Treasury, as well as DSTIA, which we are very happy with the DSTIA to come in as part of the clean audit. We are very worried with the audits that are sitting at that yellow zone. You'll hear when AG present on Thursday, she even used the words that we should stop to compliment these auditees. Because these auditees, they are there because they're not complying with laws and regulations, and also they're not reporting transparently in terms of their performance. And therefore, we need to really be hard about these auditees for them to pay attention on the things that keep them in that space. Some of them, they were even able to address the performance information, but what keeping there is the compliance with laws and regulations. And those compliance with laws and regulations, most of them is relating to supply chain management. So therefore, this is the category that we should be even harder with those ones if you compare it to those ones that are sitting at the qualified spot. You'll see on the presentation that should be presenting on Thursday, it's just that we didn't do it here. We even went to an extent where we've got auditees that are sitting in that category for more than 10 years. So you can see that there's no intention to move. They are complacent to that space. So that is what we need to do to ensure that we push those auditees out of that space. The auditees that are still have qualifications is 4, which is the Community Safety, Roads and Transport, Office of the Premier, as well as the Free State Development Corporation and Health. FTC, they still have a lot of qualifications. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done by FTC. After the Premier, they were able to move. I know that, I think you'll find out I think they're all of them left with 1 qualification. So I think they are at the point that we should be able to get out of the qualification and be able to address the key issues, which is compliance and performance information. And then those ones that were saying that we need to be harder, you can see that agriculture, for example, yes, we still have AOPO findings, but we are happy with the progress that they are making. And I won't be surprised if come this financial year that they will resolve their issues around about AOPO, which we are happy. We are happy with sport as well as COCTA because they were able to deal with the issues of the performance information. So therefore, the issues that they have is the compliance. So on those ones that we still want to drive them to address the AOPO, those are that are sitting at the financially unqualified, is agriculture, education, human settlements, as well as social development. So that at least we know that institutional integrity that I mentioned in the was it institute? I think it was transparency. That one that I was talking about earlier, to say the institution should be able to provide reports that are reliable, and that is where it becomes critical. That if, for example, the Department of Agriculture is unable to produce the critical, reliable reports, so it means that even if you go to their annual report, you won't be able to ascertain as to whether are they dealing, for example, with the foot and mouth disease, because that is what actually these things mean, is that you perform as the institution to drive your mandate, but how do you report now in the supporting that you have that confirm that what you reported is your achievement was indeed the achievement. So I'm using the mouth disease because it's a new something that is we all know about, so that you can see how critical that our departments need to focus to make sure that we get the performance information reporting right. And then the one that is really worrying us is the compliance with laws and regulations. So you can see all of them, they've got findings around compliance with laws and regulations. And then also those ones that are sitting at qualified, the four, so you can see all of them, they are fine. They are dealt with the issues of performance information, and the issue that they need to address is compliance with laws and regulations. The top compliance issues that we are raising, the first one is the issue of the financial statements when we receive. So when we receive the financial statements, we audit them, and we identified material misstatements on those financial statements, it automatically translates to a non-compliant. So it means that when the auditors submit their financial statements, they need to ensure that it is free of material misstatements. And then the other areas is the prevention of UIFW, which I think I spent quite a lot. I see that there was a bit of a reduction if you compare it to the 23-27. So in 23-24, there were 7 auditees, and which it increased to 10, which is concerning. Then we are concerned about consequence management, although we can see that some departments are starting to address, but the number is still high, because out of the 16 auditees, 9, which represent 56%, we still have material findings on the consequence management. We have also the strategic planning and performance management, which we also report material findings, as well as procurement and contract management. We're reporting also material findings in that space. And then if we look at the next slide, it first talk about the quality of the financial statement. So you can see even on the 12 that are financially unqualified, if you look at the slides for the outcome, for the audit outcomes, where we indicated that there are 3 clean audits as well as 9 unqualified with findings, which means it's 12. So of that 12 that we have there, it was only 8 of those that submitted the financial statements of good quality.
Yes. Your slide on overall audit outcomes, the one you sent us and the one you flighted are not the same.
Which one, Chair? That one.
The
It's
one,
not the same as?
Yeah, it's not the same as the one you gave us. Oh, no. No, yeah, they're the same. Okay. On the printed
was-
black and white, that yellow is not there. Now I saw.
I was
So
shocked.
it's old age now.
Okay. So Honorable Chair, of that 12, that is what we are emphasizing, which is something that we need to work on. Only 8 of those ones gave us the financial statements of good quality. And the 4 of those dependent on the audit process, where we have to identify the material misstatements on their financial statements, and then and we're happy that they were able to go and adjust those financial statements. Hence, they end up being financially unqualified. The block that is important is the one that is in the center, because you can see that these are the drivers the drivers for the audit outcome. So we look at the record keeping, we're looking at the daily, monthly controls, in year and year end reporting, as well as the review and the monitoring of compliance. So if you look at how we assess, we look at the institutions where the controls are good, concerning, or poor. So you can see that of the 16 auditees, we are saying 6 who have the record management is poor, which means those auditees, if they're not fixing the record management, we can easily find ourselves that we see regressions in the audit outcomes. Also, we're saying the controls are poor for the monthly and daily controls. So we say 5 of our auditees, the controls are poor. In year and year end reporting, 6 of those, we are saying the controls are poor. And the review and the monitoring of controls in 8 of the auditees, we are saying the controls are poor. The one that is in the middle is concerning. Those auditees can go either way. If they're not improving their controls for record management, daily controls, monthly controls, and the review, they can regress. So which means if we are not getting this picture right, the picture that we reflected on the audit outcome is not sustainable. And therefore, we need to invest more to ensure that the controls that are concerning and poor, that we need to deal with them so that they get to good. And this is where the internal audit and the audit committee play a role. Because the internal audit, their objective for the internal audit is to support management to improve their internal controls. So hence that emphasis that I put at the beginning to say we need to push the accounting officers to be deliberate on how they utilize the internal audit and the audit committee for us to improve and sustain good audit outcomes. And then the areas for the qualifications, we do have a qualification on goods and services, a repeat finding on immovable tangible capital assets, the repeat finding on the accrued departmental revenue, trade payable and receivable, which is repeating, revenue is repeating, and then we've got a new finding on the operating lease. So those are the type of findings that we have at our auditees. And then the next slide, which is a very critical one, which is talking about performance planning and reporting for service delivery. Again, if you look at the quality of the report that we received, of the 11, which this picture that I reflected where I said, at least we've got about 11 of the auditees where we can see that they published the annual report, which is reliable. There was only one auditee that submitted a performance report without any material findings that we identified, which again is the concern that we can easily slip up and regress in that area. So 10 of those ones that we were able to identify material findings and they were able to adjust. So you can see those ones, yes, the 10 that we allowed. So those are the ones that we end up not having the material funding. So I think it's the area that we just really need to ensure that we pay attention to it so that we are able to address these. The type of findings that we identifying in this area, you see that 29% of our auditees is where we raise findings that what they indicated in the annual performance report as the achievements, we're saying that those achievements are not reliable, which means that they are not supported. So, which means 29% of our auditees, which is 4 of our auditees, we reported those findings. And then 7%, we are saying that indicators and targets are not well defined, not verifiable or measurable, which is one auditee that we have that challenge. And then 14% that we're saying that they excluded the indicators that measure performance on core mandate of their functions, which is very concerning that for the auditees to be able to drive and fulfill their mandate, they need to make sure that they've got the indicators in their annual performance plan that is driving those areas. We are saying that these findings is as a result of the weak internal control environment due to a lack of adequate record keeping, processing, reconciling, and reporting control. So you can see that the weaknesses that we're picking up on the performance side is the similar issues that we're picking up on the finance side. And we also identified that the administrative leadership did not prioritize and perform adequate oversight and monitoring over the performance reporting. So those are the areas that we're highlighting. And then on the next slide, Chair, is the issue of the IT environment. Is the area that we cannot run away of. If we're not investing in this area, I think our auditees are going to continue to struggle to improve their service delivery that is expected for them to deliver on. So when we are looking at the IT environment, we're looking at the IT governance, which we still pick up some findings there. And one of the key findings the team identified is the frequent leadership changes that are happening there, with the result that your governance structures are impacted because of that. The resources and the capacity is not sufficient, and we see that the departments are not really investing enough in this space. And then also we had findings around about IT security. And one of the main drivers is because we are still using the legacy systems, particularly at the entities where they have weak security controls and inadequate logging capacity. And then at the Department of Health, there were findings that the team identified on inadequate implementation of initiatives as the e-education strategy. So those are the type of findings, but I think it's the area that we really need to push our auditees to invest. And also sometimes, when I attend some of these meetings, you sit and look at the how the senior management of the department is made up, and you find out there's no one representing IT. And IT is a strategic imperative, and therefore it needs to get expression as part of the senior management director deliberations and the leadership to how to move forward. And then on the issues of the weaknesses in procurement and contract management, we still highlighting where we pick up some findings, and I think this slide is not because these are the only departments that have findings, and I think because of the exercise that we are highlighting, we were able to focusing on this department, and we're highlighting the challenges around that. We still have issues around the uncompetitive and unfair procurement processes. inadequate contract management, employees doing business with the state, and the awards to other state officials. So those are some of the findings that we are still identifying. And the main cause is because of the lack of adequate controls and monitoring, as well as the weak culture of accountability, where consequences for non-compliance are applied. So we give the departments every year these type of findings, but because we are not implementing consequences, the other officials see no reason why they have to comply with the legislation. So we continue to get these because of the culture of impunity. And then regarding the unauthorized, irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure, so you can see that the unauthorized expenditure is very high, is sitting at about 867 million compared to the prior year, which was sitting at about 400 million, which is very concerning because it reflects an upward trend. Irregular expenditure is consistent compared to the prior year, sitting just below $1 billion. And then the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, we see that some little bit of a reduction. Then the top contributors for unauthorized expenditure is education. And we know that education forever have pressures around about compensation of employees, which is the main driver. And education of the unauthorized expenditure contribute 91%. And the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and the top contributors, which they are contributing 95%, it is FDC and the Department of Health. So those are the ones that are top contributors. And then on the irregular expenditure, which those three entities contribute 83%. Community safety, roads and transport contribute 55% at 552 million, which is $500 million. And then Department of Education, 15%, and then human settlements contribute 13%. So when we're looking at the nature of that irregular expenditure, the big one is the breach of 5 pillars of procurement, which is where we find out the process was either not equitable, not fair, not cost effective, not transparent, and in some instances not competitive, which is the main contributor is 923 million. Then we have instances of the limitation of scope of 2 million, and all these were from the Department of Agriculture, which was because of the 5 individual quotations not submitted of less than 1 million each. Then we have HR non-compliance sitting at about 18 million. Other expenditure we did not have for this year. When we were interrogating and following further, we could not find any instances of where we are saying for sure that there was no value for money or the goods were not received. So we did not find, because that is the other thing that we go further to say, what does the irregular expenditure have tell us? So I think the picture, what is telling us is that yes, we received the goods, we don't comply, and it's not that the services were not provided, they are provided, but the risk that we have is that we could be paying more than because of the fact that we're not opening up the market so that we get the prices that are competitive. And then on the consequence management, so you can see that if you're looking at the UIF balances, UIFW balances, in the prior year, we were sitting at 21 billion, so there was a slight reduction because in 24-25 is at 19 billion, which is still very high, that we definitely need to deal with those balances. And the top contributors, you can see the top contributors for the lack of investigating the UIFW and incurring of the unauthorized, irregular, fruitless, and wasteful department what is concerned is the service delivery department. So, which means that the provision of the services, it get compromised. So you see that the Department of Human Settlements is the one of them, Department of Health, Education, as well as Community Safety, Roads and Transport. And therefore, those are the areas that we really need to ensure that if we really want to move our auditees towards doing good in the continuum, we need to get them out of that zone of contributing to the unwanted expenditure. And then at human settlement, I see that we moved quickly on this slide. At human settlements, with the irregular expenditure as well as fruitless and wasteful expenditure that we reported, we can say that is not a true reflection, because human settlements, there was the dispute that we were dealing with them on irregular expenditure, which is about 842 million, which means of the amounts that we are reporting is not included, as well as the fruitless and wasteful expenditure of 71 million. And I know these matters were even taken up with National Treasury and were taken up with SARS. One of it was for them, the contractors that come and do the remedial work, according to the guidelines of human settlements, those suppliers should not charge tax for that. But unfortunately, when human settlements were paying them, they pay them inclusive of VAT. But I know that is something that they are dealing with, is something that they interacted with SARS as well. And then the one on the irregular expenditure is the contract that they piggyback with the Northern Cape, which is contrary to the court. There was the court judgment that was made specifically around piggybacking and how do you go about. Hence, we are always emphasizing to the auditees to say rather go for your own procurement, because if you piggyback a contract to another department, there are limitations, and you find out that the departments, when they do that, they don't observe those limitations. For example, the limitations, if I use the easy example, let's say you are piggybacking with another Department of Human Settlements to build the RDP houses. If that department, their contract was to build 100 houses, you must share with that department in that 100. You can't now that department continue to build their 100 and then you build an extra 50. Then that means it's unfair, because now that contract was for 100, then you end up now making that contract to be 150. So there's quite a number of limitations which make that process complex. And then if we go to the next slide on the material irregularities, in the province, we issued 30 material irregularities with the estimated financial loss of 620 million. Of those 30 material irregularities, 14 of them relate to the procurement and payment. 2 is the assets that are not safeguarded. 4 is the weaknesses or losses around revenue management. The 2 relate to the interest and penalties. And then 8 relate to instances where we identified that the payments were made by the departments, but there were no benefits that were received for those payments. And mostly those are relating to the infrastructure. You see that is talking about most of them, the issues of the standing time. So what we found is that the department will enter into a contract for the construction of a particular infrastructure. And life happens, and then the work could not progress, and the contract specify how do you remedy that situation. It's either you remedy it by giving the contractor more time to finish the project, or it says you are going to pay them for standing and doing nothing. So we found out that the departments, they enter into contract which is in the best interest of the department, where it says, if you had the standing time, I'm not going to pay you, but I'm going to give you more time. But when it happens, then find out that what they do, they pay them instead of giving them more time. So you actually paying them for the standing time, and there's no value that you received because the construction was not happening at that time. So the progress that we are making with regard to the material irregularities, I think we are happy when we're starting to see that some of the outcomes that we see is where we're starting to see that we have some losses that we prevented. Because of when we identify the material irregularity, we notify the accounting officer, then they stop that process, which equate to 116 million. Then for 162 million, we know that the last time we engaged with the department, they were in the process of recovering that financial loss. And then 670,000, that loss was already recovered. And we also see in 6 instances of the material irregularities where the responsible officials were identified and the disciplinary processes were taken and completed, or they are in the process. And then there was one material irregularity where the contract was stopped. And then there were 8 material irregularities where the internal controls and the processes were improved to prevent the reoccurrence. Because that is basically the objective of the material irregularities, that we want to see the accounting officers to demonstrate those disciplines so that we are able to prevent further losses to the public entities. So on this slide, we're also sharing one of the good example of the initiative that was taken by Distia when we raised the material irregularity around about the transfer payments. I'm not going to read, but I think there was good steps that were taken by the accounting officer, but I think you can always read on those. And then the next slide, I think I did mention the concern around about the fiscal pressure in the province. So we are saying that we see a continued eroding of funds and future obligations in the province. So you can see that we are saying that 7 of our auditees are sitting at a deficit space, which represent about 3 billion of the status of those. And then we've got the negative bank balance, which is where the department, they have the bank overdraft, which is equated to 2.2 billion around them. And then the departments that had cash shortfall of 3.5 billion. I think this is what we always say, that if you've got a shortfall, it's starting to eat in your next year budget. So I think we're highlighting that we've observed that shortfall. And then we the claims that are made against the departments, which is 7 billion. And of that 7 billion, we are saying that 5 billion is as a result of the Department of Health regarding the medical claims. So I think, Honorable Chair, with this one, sometimes I'm not sure, maybe Treasurer will speak to it. I'm not sure whether we are doing good or great. What always concerns us with health, there's huge claims, but there's limited process of resolving those claims. So you see, even when you're looking at the payments are very small that they are making, but those claims are sitting there for a number of years. And I think the concern is that if we are not resolving, you can imagine if health can find themselves in one financial year that they have to settle quite a few of the billions that they have of the 5.7 billion that they are owing through the medical claims. And then we've got 10.7 billion of the amounts that are sitting at the payables, which means is something that the auditees must pay against their budget. So those are the money that they owe. I think it speaks to the issue that we're saying when we were talking about it, where we said Treasury need to really come and be very close in terms of monitoring the spending, because if we keep on making these commitments, these are the commitments that are really starting to eat against our budget. Yeah. And then on the last slide, Chair, which is the root causes and the recommendations. And so our root causes speak to our attention around about the oversight, attention, which is the root cause, the recommendations that are directed to leadership, which we are saying there must be a focus on the oversight, the lack of consequences. And then we need to deal with the issues of the ethical lapses to tolerate, so that we don't tolerate the issues of the conflict of interest, and also to set the tone for the culture of, to change the culture of compliance. And then on the financial and performance management, to deal with the poor record keeping, the weak review and the monitoring controls. And then on the governance deficiencies, we are encouraging that we deal with the audit committees so that the work that they do there, it is impactful. And then also to deal with the lack of investigations that we need to deal with. So if I can just sum up in terms of the recommendations. So our recommendations are focusing on that. Then the achievement of the key targets, these ones, I'm just going to run them quickly. I think we're just sharing, focusing on those key service delivery departments. So you can see that human settlements, they achieve only 29%, health 67, education 95, community safety, roads and transport is 66. I think we had a discussion with the human settlements, because if you notice, Honorable Chair, every year we keep on reporting human settlements underachieving their targets. And I think what we come to see is how they set their targets. Maybe they need to see how do they set their targets differently. So they will set, for example, to say we are going to build 10 houses. But the reality of those houses is going to be completed after year end. So when they report at year end, they will report that that house, the target is not achieved. So I think we said maybe they need to rethink the way they set their target so that it is realistic in terms of the expected performance during that period. So hopefully once they deal with that, it will starting to show us how they reflect their achievements. We're still picking up the misalignment between the achievement of the targets and the spending of the budget. And I think is the area that we also really need to invest our time so that there's some kind of alignment between those two. And then the following slides, then we gave the status focusing on those key service delivery departments. So the things that I just mentioned, we just package for health, for example, to say, how does health perform in terms of financial statements, compliance, grant management, infrastructure, financial health, as well as the, so that we pack it for each and every one. And we also spoke to, because we always work very close with health around about their initiatives to be ready for NHI. So we go and do visit the ideal clinics and hospitals, and we could see that there's still a lot of work to do just to make sure that we are closing the gap for us to be ready for the NHI. And then there was the program that we focused on, particularly on the oncology services. And there were some findings that we identified, which were communicated also with the department for them to be able to focus attention to that. And also, I think also we raise the issue of the department to say, what does the department's plan? Because we understand that sometimes the health in the province is under pressure because of their geographical position. So we are not serving only the Free State people, we are serving the people from the Eastern Cape, from Northern Cape, Northwest, and Lesotho. And how do we respond to that? Because if they don't have the plan of how to respond, our health services will forever be under pressure because of those high demands that they need to service, and also particularly with the Lesotho, what is the initiatives to ensure that we collect what is due to the province so that we are able to continue to provide the health, primary health services that is expected. And then on the infrastructure delivery, we continue to look at these areas. We're looking at the planning, we're looking at the implementation, management, and the commissioning, and we continue to find findings around those areas that the needs assessment are not properly done, the feasibility studies are not done. We don't have enough budget, but we started the project. As a result, some projects we are unable to finish because the budget is not complete. So I think that picture is just reflecting of some of the key findings around about the projects. And then I know that we talk about the quality of spending, and with the quality of spending, we focus again to those key departments: community safety, education, health, as well as the human settlements, as to say they've got few big budget, where do they sit in terms of the outcome, and how is their budget looking like? And also we look at what are the type of findings that we have, because I believe that also as the province, when we do the oversight, we do the oversight with the end in mind in terms of the impact. So if we choose where do we want to spend most of our time, are we spending our time more to the departments that are taking the big chunk of the budget for the province? Because you know that if your impact is that for them to improve the spending and then we get more value of their spending, then we know that we are covering a big chunk. If I recall the MEC, I think was saying your budget this year is 49 billion. So you can see that if as part of your monitoring, you're focusing on 36, you are covering quite a big chunk of that 49 billion of the budget to improve and make sure that we get value from out of that. And then the next slide is education. I think it's also giving the same picture. Then education, you can see that we also focus on the school nutrition program. We also focus on the early childhood development. And those are the type of findings that we have, which I believe can also help the committee in conducting its oversight. And then also you see the picture at human settlements as well as community safety, roads and transport. And then the last slide is the recommendations that you give. So you can see that we split our recommendations so that we are clear who are we talking to, what type of action that we are expecting. So you can see that with the Troika, which is the Premier, Legislature and Treasury, that we are saying that the Office of the Premier should address capacity constraints in its monitoring and evaluation unit to track the province's service delivery implementation. I think I did mention when we were looking at the Office of the Premier. Then we say the Provincial Treasury must enhance its monitoring and oversight initiatives to support unqualified with findings and qualified auditors to improve their audit outcomes and underlying control environment, which I think the emphasis is indeed on the underlying control environment. Then we said the MECs, that all MECs must develop and improve existing processes to impactfully support their auditees in addressing the UIFW investigation backlog, applying consequence management and reducing the UIFW that is incurred. Then the MEC for Treasury should enhance monitoring mechanisms on the provincial spending and increase efforts to improve the province's financial health, specifically at the departments under financial distress. As you can see, the analysis that we've done around about the finances. Then for the legislature on the committees, we are saying that, the oversight, which is firstly the audit committee. So you see that as AGSA, we're putting really a lot of emphasis on the role of the audit committees. So we're saying that the audit committee should set clear, achievable timelines for corrective actions and monitor timelines to ensure that corrective actions are implemented. The audit committee chairperson should timely escalate challenges to the executive authority for intervention. And that is really what we are encouraging, that there must be that direct contact of the audit committee chairpersons to speak directly to the MECs so that they are able to give them that independent assurance as to whether the internal controls are working as intended. And then lastly is the portfolio committees should improve their review process of APPs submitted and enhance in-year process to monitor and recommend corrective actions where challenges in achieving the service delivery targets are identified. So I think the mostly with the portfolio committee, I think we really want to say the audit committee, portfolio committee, that we need to drive these things for impact. It should not be just for the auditees just to tick the box that, yes, I appeared before the committee, I tick the box, but what is the impact that you want to drive so that we can starting to see the improvement in terms of the service delivery that is driven by the auditees. So thank you very much, Chair. I know that it is long, but I thought that this is what we share to support the legislature to perform its oversight. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Dr. I think some of the issues, in fact, what you have raised, coincidentally, some of those issues you have raised them as we were dealing with the adjustment and also the appropriation last week, in the session of last week. Maybe without wasting time, let's go straight to the Treasury to fill the gaps where they exist.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members, MEC.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The acting, the acting HOD, they're attending the preparatory for the presidential visits, and the other department is also invited, so we share the responsibilities. Now I'm going to give the PAG to just outline what we have.
I also wish to apologize because I got a clear explanation from the HOD in the menu. So at least you have assisted me to explain to the members what I should have told them earlier on. Thanks, MEC.
Thank you, MEC. I'm not going to duplicate everything that we already heard from AGSA, so I'm just going to take you through a few slides. I just want to mention from the beginning, AGSA do not report on the Free State Gambling and Liquor Authority in their report, as well as housing funds. So we include those two entities and funds in our presentations as well. So if you see differences between the presentations, then it's due to those two. And then as well as the figures reported by AGSA on the irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure, you will see there's differences in the amounts. They included FTC in their presentation, and we did not include FTC in our amounts in the presentation. So that is the differences that I just want to highlight before we start. Thank you. If we then go to the presentation, I'm going to skip the first few slides. It's already presented by AGSA. It's the audit outcomes from the previous financial years. I just want to indicate for our departments, we did not have any adverse or disclaimed audit opinions in the 24-25 financial year. Then on slide 8, you will see there's an indication of all the number of qualification paragraphs, disclaimer paragraphs raised for the departments. So we have the stats there from the 18-19 financial year to 24-25. So you will see for the departments there was a decrease from 33 in 18-19 to 4 in 24-25. So it is looking better, but it's still not the desired results. So in total, you will see for departments and entities, in the 23-24 financial year, there was 24 paragraphs, and it was slightly decreased to 19 in the 24-25 financial year. So the remaining areas that the departments must focus on that still has qualified audit opinions is Office of the Premier, it's goods and services. That's still the problem. It's occurrence. They could not prove the occurrence of the expenditure in the 24-25 financial year. The problem that we do have is if they do not fix this in the current financial year, they will still be qualified on the comparative figures. So they are supposed to go back to the 24-25 financial year and re-look at all the transactions and make sure everything is in order. The Department of Health, the only problem they still have is on the immovable tangible capital assets, and then community safety, roads and transport on accrued departmental revenue. So those are the areas that the departments are struggling with. Gambling and FTC still has a lot of challenges. You will see that gambling, we have the principal agent receivables, principal agent payables, and then FTC, it's quite a number of paragraphs. The one that they resolved was trade and other payables, but then you will see the one that is new, it's actually trade and other receivables. So it was just switched. And then operating lease assets, it's still a challenge. Investment property, they have challenges with the investment portfolio, all the buildings that is in their name that they need to lease out. So that's still a big challenge for FTC. The performance information I'm not going to touch on. I think Mr. Duda actually explained that in detail quite a lot. I just want to highlight on this slide, this is the non-compliance areas that departments are struggling with. The next slide will be entities, but let's just look at the departments. So the biggest challenge for departments currently is procurement management. Out of the total of 88 paragraphs on non-compliance, 22 relates to procurement management and 18 to budget and expenditure management. So those are actually our two biggest areas that we struggle with for departments on non-compliance. And then you will see basically the last line there just before the total is consequence management. So there's 21 paragraphs out of the 88 that relates to consequence management, and that is actually what results in the irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So procurement management is actually the top problem that departments are struggling with for non-compliance. In terms of the entities, budget and expenditure management, 4 out of the 18, and then misstatements in the financial statements, it's also 4 out of the 18. Then our unwanted expenditure, I think we use this term loosely in the province. Unwanted expenditure, not actually well defined, but it actually includes the unauthorized expenditure, irregular expenditure, and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So we just term that as unwanted expenditure for the departments. I know AGSA also call it UIFW, but it's basically the same thing. So in terms of the irregular expenditure, you will see a decrease from 6.868 sorry, let me just get the figures right here. Unauthorized expenditure increased with 674.3 million rand. That was basically the Department of Education. They had over 700 million unauthorized expenditure in the previous financial year. We will see the detail on the next slide per department. And then fruitless and wasteful expenditure increased slightly, and there was a small decrease in irregular expenditure of 6.868 million. A decrease from 849 million to 842 million rand. I just also want to emphasize we are aware of what Mr. Duda explained in the presentation, that there's still irregular and fruitless for the Department of Human Settlements that's under assessment. So we are trying to resolve that matter now before the new audit is starting. This slide is the irregular expenditure per department. You will see there's a cumulative amount as at the 31st of March 2025. So in total, the department still needs to address 16.4 billion rand of irregular expenditure that needs to be investigated. From the previous meetings we had, the acting HOD of Provincial Treasury explained that Provincial Treasury appointed a panel of experts. So there's actually two. There's one for PFMA and one for MFMA. The one for PFMA was appointed in November. There's 5 service providers, and departments were already requested to submit the cases to Provincial Treasury for investigation. So we did receive requests from Agriculture, Social Development, Health, the Office of the Premier and Social Development, yes. Those are the ones that already submitted cases. So we did, from Provincial Treasury side, request quotations from those service providers. We evaluated and we did appoint, so those investigations can start. The panel of experts was appointed for 36 months, so it's not just a short-term solution that we have. We actually appointed them for 3 years, so hopefully we can reduce the 16.4 billion backlog before the 3 years expire. Then in terms of the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, we have the cumulative amount there for the, as at the 31st of March, it's 464 million. There was a small increase of 500,000 from the previous financial year to the 24-25 financial year. Then we also just want to reflect on the capital commitments. You will see the capital commitments in the province. It's basically your projects, computer equipment, other equipment, decreased from 3.2 billion to 2.9 billion rand. The biggest departments that is responsible for these capital commitments is education, 56% of it, health, 27%, and community safety, roads and transport, it's 12% of that amount. Then on the next slide, we just have the breakdown of the capital commitments per department. Like I've already indicated, the biggest ones is health, education, and community safety, roads and transport. The accruals and payables, it's a big headache for us. It links to the presentation done by Mr. Duda also on the financial health of the province. So our accruals and payables in the province increased from 3.1 billion to 3.9 billion rand. So that is basically expenditure that was not paid in the 24-25 financial year that rolled into the budget of the 25-26 financial year. So departments are already starting with a backlog in terms of their budgets. I'm going to skip slide 20. I just want to focus on slide 21. You will see there to the right side, it's the total and then 30 days and 30 days plus. So basically 3 billion of the 3.9 billion is already older than 30 days, which is the transgression of the Treasury Regulations 8.2.3. So a huge amount of our accruals and payables is already exceeding 30 days. In terms of contingent liabilities, it's the 7.397 that Mr. Duda also reported in his presentation. Health is making up 77% of that total amount, community safety, roads and transport 10%, and human settlements 9%. So those are the 3 departments with the biggest amounts on the contingent liabilities. There we just have the slide on the contingent liabilities per department. You will see for health is 5.7 billion rand. Contingent liabilities on their books. Most of it's medico-legal claims, and it's dragging for a while, so it's not new cases. Then in terms of risk and internal audit, Mr. Duda also mentioned that the internal audit needs to play a bigger responsibility with the assessment of the internal controls and improving of internal controls. So from Provincial Treasury side, we also do assessments on internal audit and risk management throughout the year. So capacity building, what we've done is there was International Fraud Awareness Week sessions in November, Anti-Corruption Day session 9 December. Then we had combined assurance training for the CROs and the CAEs, the 21st and 22nd of Jan this financial year. We also had an awareness session with our suppliers on extortion. We had someone from SAPS and National Treasury to present to the suppliers on extortion. And then we had just last week business continuity management training, the 12th and the 13th of March. So that is training initiatives that we are trying to do from Provincial Treasury side on risk management and internal audit. This is the overall view of risk management in the province. You will see there's columns just indicating if there's a risk management committee appointed. Luckily now all the departments and our public entities have risk management committees, but some of them are still struggling in exercising their duties. We have ratings there for risk management committee, fraud risk management, and ethics risk management. So the biggest I don't want to say problem, but where we are struggling the most is our entities again, FTC and Free State Gambling. They do not have those committees yet running smoothly, so we are not able to do the assessment. So we're not getting the information from them to actually perform assessments. So that is why you will see they not assessed. And then from the departments, I just want to indicate human settlements got very low scores there in terms of the other departments, but they are improving. So they have people appointed now, so the scores are still low, but there's definitely improvement from the previous financial year, so they are getting there. In terms of internal audit, the ratings that you see there is still from the 24-25 financial year. At the beginning of this 25-26 financial year, we did not do all the assessments. There was a change in the internal audit standards, and we gave the departments the opportunity just to align themselves with the new standards. So we are busy finalizing all those assessments now towards the end of March, and we will be able to provide a consolidated report by the end of March to the MEC on the internal audit units and the audit committees. We have audit committees appointed in all the departments and entities currently. There's a lot of departments that actually appointed audit committees in the 25-26 financial year, but everyone is now, there's a committee in place at all the departments now, so hopefully it will go better in terms of the oversight. Then on the resolutions of PROPAC issues, adopt resolutions, it's tabled, and then it's issued to the MECs. What we've done from Provincial Treasury side is we try to monitor those resolutions just to see if the departments actually implement the resolutions from PROPAC. So there's two sets of resolutions. It's one that's specific to each department, and then there's also transversal resolutions. So the last one that we do have is on the 23-24 financial year, the annual reports that you assessed, and it was tabled on 4 April 2025. So we do not have any resolutions after that. So those are the resolutions that we do monitor. But I just want to highlight in terms of Office of the Premier, Education, Community Safety, Human Settlements, FTC, and Free State Gambling and Liquor Authority, the progress of implementation is very low. So I think if you do your assessments and you call the departments to maybe present on the performance information, just ask them as well to report on your PROPAC resolutions, because there's actually no or little progress for some of the departments on the resolutions. Then on the next slide, it's the transversal resolutions. Again, Office of the Premier, Education, Fleet Management, FTC, and Gambling. There's actually no progress on the transversal resolutions issued by PROPAC. Then the big problem currently is unauthorized expenditure. I think Mr. Duda also touched on it in his presentation. So I just want to take you through the unauthorized expenditure quickly. Just the definition, I think we all know it by now. It's an overspending of a vote or expenditure not in accordance of the purpose of the vote. I'm not going to take you through all the legislation. The big one is Section 34 of the PFMA. That is the responsibilities of PROPAC. So Section 34 of the PFMA indicate that unauthorized expenditure does not become a charge against the revenue fund except when the expenditure is an overspending of the vote and provincial legislature approves a direct charge against the revenue fund. So we have two options. You can either say it's a direct charge against the provincial revenue fund or it's a direct charge against the department. But we've been presenting the unauthorized expenditure for quite a number of years, but there's no resolutions taken on the unauthorized expenditure. And without the resolutions, we can't move on the unauthorized expenditure. So just in terms of the previous act, Free State does not have a finance act since the previous resolutions were taken by the Portfolio Committee on March 2018. That is the last resolutions that was taken by ProPac. So in terms of those resolutions taken in 2018, there was a Finance Act ascended in 20 March 2020. And that act dealt with the STIA, education and police, roads and transport. So since the resolutions of 2018, ProPac actually didn't take any for us to take this process further. So the process that we need to follow is just in this diagram. The accounting officer report the unauthorized expenditure to Provincial Treasury. Then provincial departments are supposed to conduct an investigation on those unauthorized expenditure, determine who's responsible, if there's anyone that's accountable or not. Then we assess those reports of the departments. We say, okay, we are happy with your investigation, or we send it back to the departments to say they need to augment some of the recommendations or from the information that's contained in their reports. Then we as Provincial Treasury present the unauthorized expenditure to this committee. ProPac then takes a resolution in terms of that section 34 of the PFMA. Based on the resolutions that you take, then the MEC of Finance table a finance bill in legislature. Legislature debate the finance bill and may assent, reject or pass the finance bill. Once the legislature passes the bill, it is sent to the Premier for signature and then it becomes the Finance Act. So we are basically right there in the middle where ProPac needs to take resolutions on the unauthorized expenditure for us to actually take it further. So in terms of the unauthorized, that's not dealt with by ProPac yet. It's 3.4 billion rand. So you'll see it comes from the 15-16 financial year up to the 24-25 financial year. So that is actually all the amounts per department that we still need to deal with for the province. So what we've done from Provincial Treasury side, we looked at the unauthorized expenditure. We determined that it's not feasible for the departments to actually pay back that unauthorized expenditure in one financial year. So what we've done is we looked at all the accruals and payables, their financial budget pressures, the commitments that they have in place, whether they did actually submit the reports to Provincial Treasury. We also look at if they maybe in the subsequent financial years surrendered some of that money to the Provincial Revenue Fund. We also look at the cash position of the province. And then also the last two bullets there, I just want to mention, if the department's equitable share is less than 1 billion, we indicate that they must pay back a minimum of 20 million per financial year. And then where the equitable share of those departments exceeds 1 billion rand, we indicate that the minimum that they need to pay back is 50 million per financial year. So in terms of those departments, the investigation reports for the Department of Health and Sports, Arts, Culture and Recreation is still outstanding. So from Provincial Treasury side, we cannot make any recommendations to ProPac for you to take it further. We did receive Office of the Premier, the STIA, the new name, Economic Development and Tourism, that's that there. And then Education, Community Safety, we received and assessed. I just want to indicate for Human Settlements, they did submit the report to us. We assessed the report, but at this stage, we do not agree with the amount that they report as unauthorized expenditure, so we've sent it back. So we can also not deal with human settlement at this stage. So the ones that we do want to highlight to you is Office of the Premier. In total, the unauthorized expenditure is 209 million. They did surrender 11 million to the Provincial Revenue Fund. So we recommend that the balance of 198 million as a direct charge against the department. Like I've indicated, we do understand that they cannot pay that back in one financial year, so our recommendation is that in terms of the Provincial Revenue Fund, they pay back everything in the next financial year, but then for the department, it's split over the 10 financial years, 20 million per financial year. Economic development and tourism, they have small amounts, it's 1.4 million rand, so we recommend 896,000 as a direct charge against the revenue fund and 556,000 as a direct charge against the vote in the next financial year, once off. In terms of education, they have huge amounts, it's 1.6 billion rand, they've surrendered 170 million. They still need to pay back 1.4 billion rand. So in terms of what we recommend, we say against the Provincial Revenue Fund, it's at 170 million, but also split in 10 financial years. And then against the department itself, the 1.4 billion, we recommend 150 million per financial year over the next 10 financial years. Community safety, roads and transport. The total unauthorized expenditure is 746 million rand. They did surrender 14 million. They still owe us 752 million rand. So in terms of the revenue fund, we recommend that it's in one financial year, the 14 million. But then in terms of the charge against the vote, we also split it in 10 financial years. It's basically 75 million in each financial year, except for the last financial year. Chairperson, that is basically our presentation. We just recommend ProPac to note the audit outcomes, also the status of the irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure, status of the capital commitments, accruals, payables, contingent liabilities, the status of our risk management and internal audit in the province, and then also the status of the ProPac resolutions that is very slow. Departments are not implementing your resolutions that you've tabled. And then I'm not going to go through it in detail. We just highlight there all the recommendations in terms of the unauthorized expenditure. But I do need to urge you, it's now coming for 6-7 financial years that we did not deal with the unauthorized expenditure, and we cannot delay it any further. If you do not agree with the amounts that we recommend, we can discuss, we can change, we can amend, but we need to do something. We can't delay it any further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the report and presentation. Please be patient with me. I'm new on this, so I just have a few questions. So if we deal with the...
I thought maybe you are inquiring on something.
Yes, I am.
Because I wanted to establish the process moving forward, whether we deal with the two presentations before public service, or we somehow finish with the public service. I wanted that indication first from yourselves.
Okay. Chairperson, if I may, can I just ask a clarity question on what was presented now? I'm not going to go into detail. I just want clarity. Thank you. Just on clarity, so if the departments then pay back the unauthorized funds, do they pay it back to the Auditor General? Do they pay it back to Provincial Treasury? Where does it go? And if it is then paid back, where does that money go from there? Does it get reallocated to the province, or where does it go from there? And then just on the financial bill, you indicated we're in the middle. So in other words, you now did your investigation. This is the recommendations that you're giving to us. So from here, do we then have to, what's the next one that we now have to do before it can be adopted at a sitting? Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, you see, why I didn't want that question, it's because that question is tied up with a whole list of questions that we have. That's why I wanted us to get a direction. Whether do we take a public service commission and
Yes, Chair. Okay. Chair.
Dada Foko.
Foko is speaking that side.
Dada Foko.
Okay, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I think it will be proper that we must cluster these departments. Please, Chair, all of them. Thank you.
And let's take the public service, and then is it the same copy for distribution? Yeah. And so Ndati Nakedi, I think because members are here and Treasury is the one that has gone to the loo. Let's continue. Let's continue with the presentation.
Thank you
Are
very much, Chair.
you going to flight it?
Yes, yes,
Oh.
we're going to flight it. It's connected now.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chair, Speaker, Deputy Speaker, and all members and colleagues on the other side. We are delightful to have been invited to present.
If you can bring it nearer to you.
Closer.
Yeah, you know, in Mangaung, these things are there. So just
Okay, Chair, noted. Thank you once more, Chair, Deputy Speaker, and all the members.
you can put your laptop so that it doesn't. Oh, are
Is
you
it
going to
better?
read from it?
No, it's fine. Let me just,
Oh,
I will open it when I'm done. He's gonna.
oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yes.
Yes, thank you once more, Chair. The Chair would be aware that we are obligated to report to the legislature in terms of Section 196 of the Constitution on an annual basis. And on that basis, we are really happy that we were invited to come to submit this report. And we are looking forward to, we also appreciate contributions from other colleagues, particularly the AG and the Treasury. Chair, my colleague, Mr. Mlisana, the Provincial Director, is going to present the report. I just want to remind the Chair that would be aware as members that the Public Service Commission bill was approved by the NCOP last Tuesday on the 17th. And the Free State Provincial Legislature mandate was carried out in support of the bill. And tomorrow, on the 25th of this month, the Select Committee on Cooperative Governance will be sitting to finalize the details of the mandate of the bill going forward. So, in other words, as we are going to present the report, our mandate would remain the same. However, structurally in future, there are going to be changes. There would be more independence of the Public Service Commission with the introduction of the Secretariat and moving away from the DG. In other words, becoming a full oversight body, independent of all other departments of government, and working closely with Parliament and the legislature in the provinces. So I just wanted to take note of that, and I would give over to Mr. Mlisana to take us through the report of the previous years, and then much has been covered, but I think he will be able to highlight a few issues that we have flagged and also that we think you must also take note of. Chair, I think you are aware that in terms of the mandate of the Public Service Commission, implementation and monitoring, much as it is in the purview of the PSC, the legislature is also, an oversight that must ensure that they assist the PSC to ensure that its recommendations are taken and carried through by those who are supposed to do so in the departments. I am giving over to Mr. Mlisana, the Provincial Director of the PSC in the Free State. Thank you, Chair.
I'm trying to, I don't see the presentation on the, okay, all right, there it is. Thank you, Commissioner, and good morning, Chair of the committee, committee members, the MEC for Finance, and colleagues. I'm going to make a presentation quickly on the PSC section 196
4E report, which is submitted to the legislature annually. I'm going to be presenting on the key areas of oversight which the PSC is responsible for. And I'll be also looking at the manner in which the departments have dealt with and also highlighting the areas of concern in the manner the departments have dealt with some of the work and the outcomes and recommendations of the PSC. But before I do that, I just want to quickly highlight the mandate and the powers of the PSC. As you would know, it's empowered in terms of Chapter 10 of the Constitution to promote constitutional values and principles, investigate, do monitoring and evaluation, and propose measures within the public service, and advise the public service in the interest of maintaining efficient public administration over the public service. We do that as the PSC, guided by Section 196(1) of the Constitution, the values and principles governing public administration. Members, I will go straight to the research reports that we produced in the year under review, 2024-2025. And one of the projects that we embarked on was to look into the efficiency of the Free State Department of Health Emergency Medical Services. The study was conducted in 2024, and it was finalized in the same year. A report was issued to the department. Certain findings were made, and also recommendations were issued to the department. As we speak, the department has got the report, and we are waiting for an update from the department on how far and whether there is progress in terms of the implementation of those recommendations. We also, in 2025, last year, conducted an inspection at the Diamond District Hospital in the Harib district. We also made findings and we issued some recommendations. I'm not going to go to the findings one by one, but I'll go through the products that we produced in terms of those inspections, and also indicate that the department has got the report. It was issued to the department towards the end of last year. We are also awaiting the feedback from the department on whether there's progress in terms of the findings and recommendations made. In the same year, we also conducted inspections at Orania Krach Combined School in the Harib district. We have issued the findings and recommendations to the Department of Education and the district responsible for that region. We are also awaiting for an update or response feedback from the department on progress in terms of the findings and recommendations that we made. We also responsible for, in terms of the constitution, for investigating grievances of employees. And we also look at the number of grievances that the provincial government has and the grievances that have been lodged by employees. And you'll see in the presentation that for 2022-2023, there was a huge number of grievances lodged. at 1,014 grievances, and which went down in the following year to 481. And in 2024-2025, there were 510 grievances lodged by employees within the provincial administration. And the mostly affected departments for all of these years, health is one of the mostly affected departments, education, social development, human settlements, and the Department of Economic Development. The nature of grievances, mostly the grievances that are reported relate to salaries and allowances, allowance-related issues, unfair treatment, performance management-related grievances. And that has been the trend for all of these three years. Coming to the grievances that were investigated by the PSC in 2022-2023, just to give you a picture over the period of 3 years, there were 22 recommendations made during that period. Recommendations emanating from investigations that were fully done. So we received grievances, some are investigated, some are not investigated. So for those that were investigated, we issued 22 recommendations. 17 were implemented, which translates into 77%, which is a good indicator in terms of whether the departments implemented the recommendations of the PSC during that particular year or not. The following year, 2023-2024, there were 13 recommendations made from the investigations that were done. 3 recommendations were implemented, which translates to 23%, which is not a good reflection in terms of the implementation of the recommendations. The departments that are culprits in terms of not implementing or not providing feedback to the PSC are indicated in the presentation. For 2024-2025, 18 recommendations were issued. There's 0 implementation. So all the departments affected have not implemented or have not given the PSC feedback on the implementation of those recommendations. Moving to complaints, as you would know, in terms of Section 196, 4F, the PSC is responsible, is required or is expected to investigate complaints as well. And complaints that are lodged to it directly or complaints that a PSC investigate on its own accord. And in 2022-2023, just to take you back to over the period of 3 years, the PSC investigated some complaints and 40 recommendations were issued. Out of those 40 recommendations, 12 were implemented, which translates to 30%, which is not a good reflection. This means that we are struggling as the PSC in terms of having our recommendations implemented by departments. Same in 2023-2024 period, 39 recommendations were issued, only 6 were implemented, which is 15%, which also indicates that the PSC is struggling in terms of the implementation of recommendations. In 2024-2025, we issued 12 recommendations, 3 were implemented, which is 25%, which still shows that we are struggling in that area. The names of departments that are affected are also indicated in the presentation for your own information. We also deal with the National Anti-Corruption Hotline. So we receive calls reporting allegations of corruption, service delivery issues, and maladministration-related issues. And for the period 2024-2025 to date, we have received 20 calls, 20 reports or 20 complaints reported through the National Anti-Corruption Hotline. Once we receive them, we're expected to refer them to departments which are affected or to other public institutions for investigation. Some of them we investigate if the issues that are complained about fall within the mandate of the PSCs. So for this period under review, 20 were reported through the NAH, the hotline. We have received only one feedback out of the 20 that were reported. 12 cases, we have not received any feedback. We are still expecting feedback on 6 cases that were referred recently. The departments affected, the departments to whom the complaints were referred are indicated also in the report for your information. And the dates the matters were referred to the departments are also indicated. Lastly, on financial disclosures for the SMS members. As you would be aware, the PSC is responsible for scrutinizing SMS financial disclosures for SMS members every year, every past financial year. So for 2024-2025, there was 98% submission rate. Only one SMS member could not submit because of transfer issues. But out of those scrutiny reports submitted, we have only received 3 feedbacks from Community Safety, Economic Development, and Department of Education. And the submission date has long passed. EAs and HODs